Thank Stuart Williams, who is not in this room currently. He's out there hanging out with some students. That's having fun. Yeah. So Stuart is good friends with Lawrence, so Stuart's connection, I was able to help us get Lawrence here for this specific talk, which is sponsored by the Sustainability Literacy Institute, and I'm the director of that. My name is Todd Lavasser, so I thank you for being here. I direct our QEP, Sustainability Literacy as a Bridge to Addressing 21st Century Problems, which views 21st century problems, i.e. the problems you all are inheriting from us, from poorly designed systems that are economic, environmental, and social in problems, in cause, sorry. And so where those three come together, social, environmental, economic systems, also called the triple bottom line of sustainability. And so this quality enhancement plan that I direct is something the college has taken on to equip you students with critical problem solving, critical thinking skills, creative problem solving skills, interdisciplinary thinking, and ways to analyze the causes of 21st century problems at the interface of the triple bottom line, and then how to design better, more importantly, solutions to them. And so Lawrence is going to talk today about how he's helped design solutions actively around the world. And so this year's theme, as you've seen around campus, has been water issues, right? Water, basic need of all organisms and a basic right. And so the College Reads book this year was The Big Thirst. So we've had this long exploration of water issues. Next year, I think, will be social justice. And the point is, for you all, by the time you're through your career at the colleges, realize these are all interconnected issues. You can't disaggregate water issues from environmental racism, from how water is valued or not valued in economic systems, to should water be privatized, yes or no, to should hotels be using millions and millions of gallons of water a day and basically wasting it, which is a question Lawrence thought through in his capacity of running businesses. So this event, part of this larger QEP on the triple bottom line of sustainability. So I thank you for being here. Quick little bio on Lawrence in his talk, water quality and access, how do we affect the cause rather than cause the effect. Lawrence Bloom is currently Secretary General of the Be Earth Foundation, a UN intergovernmental organization which advises, assists, and enables in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals on behalf of those countries with which it has treaties. And if you're not familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, they're actually listed in the clear glass room over there. There's 17 of them across the top. So really important work that is gaining more and more steam around the world. He's also recently voted by Salt Magazine as among the top 25 most conscious global leaders globally, and some months ago received an award at the UN from the Humanitarian Innovation Forum for Conscious Leadership. Formerly, Lawrence sat on the executive committee of the Intercontinental Hotel Group, from where he managed their $3 billion global real estate portfolio. Whilst there, he created an hotel environmental manual, subsequently adopted by HRH Prince Charles, His Royal Highness Prince Charles, and currently in use in over 5 million hotel bedrooms worldwide. A small part of the manual gave guests the option of whether they wanted their towels washed every night. And I'm assuming all of you have been given this choice by the time you've showed up in hotels room now. That came all the way back to Lawrence in this idea. This manual and associated initiatives were foundational for the formation of His Royal Highness Accounting for Sustainability Group, of which Lawrence remains a current member. Lawrence was appointed the first chairman of the World Economic Forum at Davos, Global Agenda Council on Urban Management, and he is a current alumnus of all Agenda Councils. He is former chairman of the UN Environmental Program, Green Economy Initiative, Green Cities, Buildings, and Transport Council. Lawrence also served as an active member of the Corporate Responsibility Advisory Group of the ICE-ACO. Lastly, his passion is to support what is breaking through by what is breaking down in the current system. He considers this action will enable the emergence of a society whose understanding around the interconnectedness of all things will harmonize conscious economics, social well-being, and environmental responsibility. There's that triple bottom line again. So please join me in welcoming Lawrence for this talk.
I listened to all that, I think it can only be downhill from here. Gosh, I must be some kind of workaholic. It's a great privilege to be here. This is a great college, and it has a great history. I understand from Stuart that 4 of the alumni from this college were signatories to the Declaration of Independence. Something to be proud of. And also, apparently in Greek, above the entrance as you come in, it says, "Who am I?" It's interesting, because any education system worth its salt should actually be asking 4 questions. Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? And maybe what does it mean to be human? Anything else is probably just an intelligence test. So where are we? I see myself as a kind of drawer of maps, and I think we're leaving what I would call an age of change and embarking on a change of age. Change of age of change are totally different, because what happens in a change of age is our relationships change. Our relationships with the world in which we live, the animal kingdom that we share this planet with, and each other and ourselves. So probably the last age of change was the Renaissance. We went into the Renaissance thinking that we were the center of the universe, that the sun went around us, that the earth was made in 6 days, and that we were pretty special. Now, we may still be pretty special, but a lot of the science that has become our new Bible, if you like, has taught us that we're actually not the center of the universe. We're the third rock of a pretty insignificant sun in a very undistinguished part of a massive solar system that actually has billions of stars, the size and greater than the size of ours. So we're probably going through some kind of identity crisis. And we're probably now setting a new compass as to where we need to be going. Because whereas the intelligence that has enabled us to get to the moon and create a smartphone where I can connect with somebody in China as easily as I can talk to the person sitting next to me, we're actually destroying the environmental structure that supports human life. Now, whichever way you look at it, that's not very intelligent. So that's where we are at the moment, and how do we get here? Well, I would suggest the technical advances of the last 500 years have been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. The discovery of the power of steam, advent of coal, electricity, different kinds of energy, have created significant wealth on this planet. And sufficient wealth that sometime in the 80s, 60s or 70s, maybe early 80s, nobody's quite sure when, we had enough wealth on this planet to feed, to house, to shelter, to give education, healthcare, access to justice, access to income, to everybody on the planet. And there was one misunderstanding, and it's this. The system which got us to where we are is not the system that can take us any further. The system that got us to where we are is not the system that can take us any further. Now, if you've ever looked at a space shot, you know that the booster rockets have a certain function. Those booster rockets take the ship out of the Earth's gravitational pull. Once it's there, the function of the boosters is over. And the skill in the space shot is to know when to let the boosters pull back to Earth and the second stage of the voyage take place. Now, the second stage of a spaceship is nothing like the boosters. And one of the advantages are you can design it when you're on the ground. I would suggest that we're designing the second stage here and now while we're in flight. Because although it may not look like it, we are a spaceship. We're rotating at over 200 miles an hour. We're traveling through space at 66,000 miles an hour. And the sun itself is traveling through space at 1.2 million miles an hour. So we're a spaceship. We happen to live on the outside. We have to begin to understand that we now need to design a different system. And those who think that because the existing system has taken us this far, it can take us any further, are making a serious mistake. Because it's that very system now that is beginning to destroy the environmental ecosystems, which, as I say, support human life. So let me tell you a little bit about my journey, and then we'll take you back into the mainstream of where I think we are. I grew up with a very simple mantra. The mantra I was encouraged to believe was, if you're rich, you're happy. It was very simple. If you're rich, you're happy. And I had no reason to disbelieve that. My parents were relatively unhappy, but they were never rich. So, by definition, if you're rich, you're happy. And I did very well indeed. I built a company under my own steam, and at the age of 29, I bought a 7-bedroom, 3-bathroom house in a place called Hampstead, which is a very lovely part of London. And as I sat there in my 6.3-litre Mercedes, why not, looking at this beautiful home, I had an amazing realization. And I said, is that it? The place that I had got to, where I thought, well, the minute you get there, life becomes easy, nothing to worry about, was not the place that I was experiencing. In fact, all I'd done was exchange one set of challenges for another set of challenges. So I did what I thought was natural to do at that time. I went out and had a drink. And 3 years later, I was still drinking, which wasn't the greatest idea. Didn't do my kidneys much good, or my liver. And I recognized eventually that there was obviously a part of me that wasn't being nourished. And I call that part of me my soul. You may call it something else. You may not even agree you've got one. You might call it your conscience. It's the passion to do the right thing. It's the passion to be in right action. And so I dedicated myself at that time to whatever I did, just be in right action, whatever the cost was. And of course, as soon as you tempt the universe, it comes up to give you the trial you've been looking for. And I was at Intercontinental. I had this idea, it'd be great to create an environmental manual, because we had $3 billion worth of property. We were the largest we were the largest hotel company in the world at that time. And so I used tech services to start to draw up this manual, and mainly focused on environmental matters, not social matters, because in the early 90s, the environment was on the horizon. Social really hadn't emerged yet. And as I started it, I came across the sort of opposition. This is what you don't read on websites. And the reason I'm sharing this with you as students is that sometimes when you're at the cutting edge of something, it isn't easy. And you do get challenged. And you have to start to dig deep. So after I'd introduced this idea at the board meeting, and everybody nodded and said, yeah, sounds like a great idea. 3 days later, I was called into the office of the chief financial officer. Really nice guy. Sat me down. Lawrence, you and I are quite good friends, yeah. You're a nice enough guy, he says to me. Nothing to not like in you, but I don't like this new idea of this environmental manual. Shareholder value, Lawrence. Talk to me about shareholder value. What he was saying was that in a company where the ethic was just to make money, there was no time for anybody to look at anything outside what appeared to be making money. And certainly in those days, environmental matters were considered to be very fluffy and cost money. Funny enough, that illusion sometimes continues to this day. But there are many aspects of environmental sustainability which actually save money. And he said, if that wasn't bad enough, 3 days later, the CFO calls me in. Sorry, the COO calls me in, Chief Operating Officer, Michael Cairns. And he says, Lawrence, again, same story, a nice guy. Quarterly bottom line. Talk to me about quarterly bottom line. And so the same old, same old. What neither of them realized is that I'd made a promise to myself that if I believed I was in right action, I would stay in that mode. And it was a very, very difficult time for me. For 6 months, these guys attacked me on the board, tried to marginalize me. And after a time, I think the CEO just thought that they were being unfair, and so started to support me. And that's the first thing that you should know. The reason I'm sharing this with you is that you might get resistance in some of your ideas. I'm going to read you a quote from a guy called William Murray, who was part of the Scottish Himalayan expedition. And he says this: until one is committed, there's hesitancy, the chance to draw back. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise occur. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favour all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance which no man could have dreamed of would come his way. Of course, now he'd say no man or woman. So, whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power and magic in it. Begin it now. So one of the messages I want to share with you this afternoon is be determined. Don't take yourself casually. Take what you're doing seriously and recognizing that you are in a change of age and you will get significant resistance to what you want to do. But you are the new age. You are what's emerging and what's to be born. So what does the new age signify? How do we move into that age? At the moment, most people you speak to are focused on what's breaking down and what isn't working. This isn't working, that isn't working. In an age of change, you have to look at what's breaking through, what's breaking down. You have to look at what's wanting to emerge. You have to see yourself as a kind of midwife, giving birth to new ideas and new thoughts, new responsibilities. What is our responsibility to those who can't help themselves? What is the responsibility to the animal community? What is our responsibility to our colleagues? What is our responsibility to ourselves? These become very big issues, very important issues. And you're all pioneers in that conversation of where your responsibility begins and ends. What I think has happened in an evolutionary trajectory is that we need to understand in tribal communities, very often there's just the identity of we. So if you look at the original Israelites, they would say, I'm an Israelite. After a time, there was a division into tribes. They could say, I'm an Israelite from the tribe of Simeon, whatever. After a longer time, they could say, I'm an Israelite from the tribe of daughter of, or son of. Still not totally individuated as a soul. What's happened now is we're all totally separate. So what is the point of evolution bringing us to such a point of separateness and isolation? I believe it's to discover what our unique gift is and what gifts we have to give to the whole community. So is the discovery of me as a total individual just to serve me as a total individual? Or is it to serve the broader community? And if so, how broad is that community? And we'll all choose. Maybe it's just our family. Maybe it's our family and friends. Maybe it's our religious brothers and sisters. Maybe it's our national brothers and sisters. Maybe it's the whole community of humanity. Maybe it's the animal kingdom. Maybe it's the environment. But be clear what you feel your responsibility is. and then live it. Because your future will be determined on how committed you are to moving forward. So to continue the story about the environmental manual, after about 6 months heaving in the sink every morning from fear, it was completed. And my CEO, John Van Praag, was a member of Business in the Community, which was a program that was fostered by Prince Charles. The Prince was the chairman of the Business in the Community. And he asked John, what's happening at Intercontinental? John said, well, one of my fellow directors has created this environmental manual. So the Prince asked if he could have a look. And by the way, at the end of the day, the only reason that the CFO and COO backed down was John and I had convinced them that we were going to be the greenest company, greenest hotel company. Well, we'll sell that. That will be the asset. Intercontinental, the greenest hotel company ever. So the Prince asked if he could have a look at the manual, and of course John says yes. The Prince looks at the manual and he says, oh, I love this manual. Can I call it the Prince's manual? Well, you don't say no to Prince Charles. And then he said, can I offer it to all the other 5-star hotel companies? Well, it's an impossible position for John. He couldn't say no. So he, of course, said yes. And then the Prince invited us and the other 5-star hotel chairman to Highgrove, which is his country estate, for lunch. And there he offered his manual, of course, to the other 5-star hotel chairman. And you don't say no to Prince Charles when you're having dinner with him in his place. So they all said yes. And then we had asked him to do 2 other things. We asked him to ask everybody to put a pool of money aside so that the hotels could be judged in accordance with the manual. They agreed, yes, we'll put this money aside so the hotels can be judged. And then we tied the general manager's bonus into the results of the audit. So it was so we had capacity to audit and monitor, and teeth at the end with regard to the general manager. So this was a virtual sale, and now that manual is in 5.5 million hotel bedrooms worldwide. It's much more broader than the towel thing, but the towel thing is great because you save cubic miles of water and as much. So laundry was our most polluting process, and now the initial return showed that 80% of people were very happy not to have a new towel every day, and the other 20%, I'm happy that they chose what they wanted to do, but we created a choice, and that was what was important. People for the first time ever had a choice. The interesting thing is that in the last 3 years, Accor Hotels, which is a large French hotel group, they have offered to plant 1 tree for every 5 towels not washed, which is quite an innovative idea. They planted 750,000 trees every year for the last 3 years, which is phenomenal. And they're doing it brilliantly. So they're doing it, trees for shade, trees for fruit, and so on. So trees as windbreaks. So they're very creative in what they do. So again, if you have an idea and you're committed to it and you make sure you deliver it, then you have no idea where other people in time will take that idea and will run with it. So let's come a little bit now on. As a result of that, the World Economic Forum at Davos asked me to chair there. Well, first they asked me to come and speak as an expert because the future of cities was what fascinated me. And then they asked me to chair the first Global Agenda Council on the future of cities. And then once you get a name for something, you get invited to do lots of things. Another was the United Nations Green Economy Initiative, where they asked me to chair, which is a huge council on green cities, buildings and transport. Over time, I became, more and more people became interested in the environmental field. And so I started to look at the social field, how one can impact socially. And by extraordinary synchronicity, I'm now been asked to chair the the environmental and social aspect of a very large or emerging hotel group again. And so there, what I've suggested on a social side is that the resort hotels will not have big air freighters coming in with frozen food from all other parts of the world. But actually what we'll do is we'll employ the local community, mainly women. We'll train them in how to grow vegetables, how to grow fruits, how to keep chickens and eggs, how to milk cows, work in a bakery. And we'll create a microfinance pool so the women actually will be self-employed, but they will be guaranteed a market from our hotel. And if we can bring other hotels within the vicinity of our hotel into that marketplace, then we'll do that. And so we'll transform the economy of the local community. Now, remember, this is the women's own business. So if they want to create more eggs, chickens, bread, cakes than the hotel needs, then they have every right to do that, of course, and sell it to the local community and beyond. So we can plant a seed there where we can socially transform entire communities. And I know in many countries where aid just doesn't go to where it's eventually, where it has the greatest impact, this will be a direct opportunity to make a difference directly into the lives of local communities. So it's one aspect, again, that I'll be looking to ensure happens wherever we create a local resort hotel, and then use that as a model. Because in the same way as Prince Charles invited the other 5-star hotel chairman to join us, so I'll invite other hotel companies to use the same pioneering process, so they can make a feature of it too, and say to their guests, would you like to see who brought the vegetables to your table this morning, who brought the eggs to your table this morning? And of course those communities will have creches, they'll have small clinics, they'll have kindergartens, so the women can bring their children and know that they'll be safe and they'll be educated. So where to from here? We're going into a time where nothing that we've known from the past is necessarily going to show us where we need to go to the future. In finance, we see the emergence of cryptocurrencies. Some countries will try to squash them, some countries will encourage them. In the end, the basis on which they're built, blockchain, will transform the way the business is done. And hopefully over time, eliminate and eradicate corruption. We're in an enormous revolution. And it's the ideas that you guys get that will make the difference. People of my generation can hold the space for you to perform. But it's your ideas and your thinking and your determination that can start to shift this tanker, this super tanker, which is actually going in quite a dangerous direction, away from the rocks that it's headed to. So let me just give you an idea of how serious the problem is, and therefore how important your solutions are. In 2004, the third assessment committee of the IPCC, which is the 1,000 leading climate scientists, said that the Arctic would be ice-free in late summer by the year 2100. In 2008, the fourth assessment said yes, the Arctic would be ice-free in late summer, but not 2100, 2080. I'll cut through the intermediary pieces. Last year they said it'll be next year. So that's the speed at which these issues need to be dealt with. It's the urgency that these issues need to be dealt with. You know, I congratulate Stuart, being quietly sitting at the back there, for helping to introduce this sustainability course into the college. I'd like to acknowledge all of you for attending it. I hope that this short talk has been of some value to you, to show you A, how important you are, and B, how important what you're doing is. I'm much better listening to questions and answering questions. So I'll stop this piece of the talk now and invite you just to share with me what your concerns are, what your hopes are, what your aspirations are, and ask me any questions, even what it's like to be drunk for 3 years. And I'm here to answer.
So, yeah, find it. Hands, questions, please.
Here's the one.
Oh, there you go. And I can walk this to something that maybe. We'll start this one, work our way over here.
Thank you so much. My question is, what is the best way to condition yourself to respond to the naysayers and the CFO, COO, who knee-jerk reaction is no? What advice would you give, outside of just believing yourself?
The first important advice is don't think they're stupid, just because they don't see the world in the way that you do. They've been very successful doing what they've been doing, and so it's very difficult for them now to change direction. And that's why what you say is it's a really great question, because it's in answering that question that will resolve how quickly we can progress. For me, it was to be just internally resolute as possible, to be as nice as possible, to say I understand you. So I would sit down with Michael and I say, yeah, I understand the pressure you're under for quarterly bottom line. I understand the reason for why you're saying what you're saying. And maybe if we look at this, we can see that there are advantages to the quarterly bottom line that we could produce. Now, in those days, we were just feeling our way, so it was very difficult. Now it's much easier with solar. I think there was just a deal done in Austin, Texas recently, to deliver solar at 3 cents a kilowatt hour. So, forget the discussion about whether coal is going to come back or not. It's irrelevant. Economically, it's dead. The game is over. So I think as long as you're aware of your facts and can talk at the level that they will understand, and make sure that they know that you hear what they say, because what they say is really important to them. And if you come from a position which students may have a capacity to do, saying, I understand it, but you don't. Well, they do from their point of view. So if you can understand where people are coming from and have the conversation from the position that they're coming from, understanding their point of view, then you can have a serious and beneficial discussion.
Could you just share a little about your perspective on why the greatest wealth accumulation over the next 50 years will come from people who innovate solutions for the problems that we face, whether they're social or environmental?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get very rich, no reason why you shouldn't. The key is, interesting enough, the first time, maybe, no, it's not the first time, it's not true, is to, the biggest opportunities are going to come by serving humanity. Maybe that sounds like some audacious thing to say. It happens to be true. I have the privilege of advising a very wealthy family. And we are looking at a process. There's an area called the Valley of Death in technology. The Valley of Death is when family gets together, they like an idea, and they put $1 million into the idea, and they create a pilot of this technology. And the pilot works, but they don't have the $30 million it takes to build a commercial plant from the pilot. And the major institutions will say, we won't finance this project unless you can show me a commercially viable plant that's been running for 100 hours. So there's a massive gap here now, currently, between what could work and what's actually being used. So very often we're using old technology that's proven because there isn't new technology that could be proven. So my conversation with this family is to put $300 million into a pool by take 10 technologies where you've got this valley of death, and out of those 10 technologies, for sure, 3 or 4 will work. And any one working will pay you $300 million and give you significant profits. That's the piece that I'm interested in, that particular technology. But there are many other examples that you can think of, but they're just gaps, where things have been done in a way which hasn't made sense, but nobody's questioned it. Often things are done because there's a momentum behind them. They've always been done that way, so they'll always continue to be done that way. So to take Stuart's point, if you question why things have always been done that way and see how they might be done differently, the opportunities now are greater than they have ever been. And the reason for that is that in the early 90s, when I wrote that report, it was a very lonely place. But a week before I attended Davos this year, there was a guy called Larry Fink. Larry Fink is chief exec of, I'm not sure actually he's chief executive chair, of the largest investment company in the world called BlackRock. They have $6.2 trillion under investment. Trillion. Let me give you a taste of what a trillion is. If every dollar is a second, $1 million is 10 days. $1 billion is 33 years. $1 trillion is 3,300 years. So they're pretty big investors. He wrote an open letter to the leading 100 corporations in which he said that he would be asking the board of those, or his company would be asking the board of those corporations at their annual general meetings what their purpose was and what were they doing around the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a massive question. Now, I'm sure Larry Fink is a lovely guy, but he didn't wake up one morning and think that would be a nice question to ask. He was under pressure to ask that question from the people who invest in BlackRock and want to know what BlackRock's policy is with the investments that they make. There's a Californian venture fund called CalSTRS. Welsh of CalSTRS in the last 2 months have employed 150 analysts in CSR, corporate social responsibility. So the one great thing of where you guys are at this time is timing. If you're a bit early, it's difficult. But if you're in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and you all are in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, then the changes that you can make on the planet are enormous. Absolutely enormous.
Other questions? Yeah, Dan.
I want to ask Lawrence, I'm intrigued by this notion of what breaks through what's breaking down.
Yeah.
Are there historical precedents that you'd cite or things that can sort of concretize that for us?
Well, of course, the ultimate thing was the spinning jenny with the Luddites, I suppose. What's breaking through, what's breaking down? I want to keep this. There are ideas. There are new ideas about the economy. and new ideas about society. There are new ideas about the environment. What's breaking down are structures which don't serve us anymore. And whereas so what I was trying to do, thanks for the question, what I was trying to do was to say that if you're looking at all the time what's not working, if every dinner party is really boring, because that's not working, do you hear what that stupid person said? Oh, and then that stupid person said that. If you're focused on what's breaking down, I did some high-speed driving for about 3 years. I loved it. But the best part was the skid driving. And if you're on a skid and you say, I don't want to hit the wall, I don't want to hit the wall, you know what's going to happen? You're going to hit the wall. The only way to deal with a skid is to drive out of a skid. So can you imagine, we're meant to be an intelligent species, and all we exchange is what's not working. Now, there was a film about 10 years ago that was meant to wake everybody up. It was called The Age of Stupid. It was a brilliant movie, but it wasn't how we made it as a species, it was how we didn't make it as a species, and it's the last man on the planet telling the story of how we didn't make it. What bonkers society keeps exchanging information about what's not working? Doesn't make sense. Stupid. So I think we should start to change our conversations and look at what's breaking through. Look what's trying to emerge. Maybe new forms of currency are trying to emerge. Let me give you an example. If I don't understand cryptocurrency, I'm new to that because at my age things just don't compute too well. But there are billionaires in Bitcoin, many billionaires in Bitcoin, because they saw that Bitcoin was breaking through what's breaking down. Now, it may be that Bitcoin is a haven for thieves and fraudsters and all the rest of it. But that's just the first of an iteration of a lot of cryptocurrencies that will serve different values and will be purchased to achieve different ends. What's breaking through? I think that I don't want to be too specific because I don't want to limit our thinking.
Well, that's helpful.
So Lawrence, I could have asked you this question many times before, but I'll be the outsider asking the insider the question. So I've never been to Davos, but my Twitter feed sends me lots of Davos. So they've obviously figured out that I'm interested in what's going on. Here's my experience of Davos through my Twitter feed. There's a grand roll-up every December, January to the event in which there's all kinds of stuff presented that would lead me to believe that the masters of the universe really do have a reasonable sense of control about what's going on. I would characterize the fourth industrial revolution as this kind of masters of the universe view of the world. And then for the remaining 10 months of the year, there's this constant trickle of, oh my God, things are going to hell in a handbasket, wrapped in a World Economic Forum report with all of the appropriate academic credentials that make it look like, well, we really didn't mean to say it's going to hell in a handbasket, but it's going to go into hell in a handbasket. The most recent one was the scientists in the North Pole are going fucking nuts over the temperature in the North Pole, but we just wanted you to know that the World Economic Forum is looking at this, and that we've created a report, and the report is here if you want to know that we know the scientists in the North Pole are going nuts. That doesn't make any sense to me. If the big event is where all the work gets done, and you want people to come to the big event to do the actual work, why during that 2 to 3 months would you completely cover up all the problems, or maybe I'm overstating the case, but present them in a way that doesn't look like It looks like everything's kind of in control. So that's my outsider to an insider question.
No, it's a great question because it says, is understanding the problem enough? Maybe we should have a few solutions. You know, it's interesting. Sometimes I get asked about greenwash. There's a lot of greenwash out there, and there's a lot of greenwash spoken in Davos. It was different this year, and I'll explain why. It was different, trust me. Greenwash is part of a trajectory. First of all, people will deny there's a problem. Then they try to make a joke out of it. Then they greenwash it, and then they deal with it. So you shouldn't be too upset about greenwash because it's on the journey to somewhere else. It's on the journey to commitment. It's not quite there yet, but you have to see what happened before. And so I can trace where people just denied there's any problem at all, everything's fine, blah, 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 blah. Then there was jokes about it, we won't even go there. Then there's greenwash. I say now, more and more companies are beginning to take this matter very seriously. We're moving out of greenwash. That letter from Larry Fink can't be underestimated. It really had an impact on Davos this year. It had a massive impact. And there was much more substance in what was happening. And I tell you what I saw in Davos, which I've never seen before, the emergence of women. The emergence of women in a massive way. I spent more time outside the inner tent in the feminine lounge, I think it's called feminine quotient, than anywhere else in Davos. The energy of those women, the focus of those women was phenomenal. It brought an energy to Davos that I've never ever felt before, never experienced before. I think one of the things that we're going to see breaking through is the emergence of women with vision and with a sense of purpose, making a huge difference. Because they come naturally from an area of nurturing. They come naturally from an area of nourishing. I think many of the women who have reached positions in the past have done so using male technologies. I think it's changing. I saw more feminine women it's called the female quotient, in the female lounge than I saw anywhere else. I was so excited by what happened. I was on 2 panels in that lounge. I chaired one of them. And you couldn't move. People were coming really from the inner tent to be in the woman's area. So there is, want to talk about breakthrough? It's with women. It's with the energy of women. It's phenomenal. It's a real revolution. Powerful. Maybe it's that's going to make the difference then. More women getting involved, making their mind up, it can make a difference.
It seems like there's somewhat of a barrier to entry for, younger generations, my age, because we haven't necessarily proven ourselves yet. And, so it might seem like, I guess in your own example, like you had already accomplished something great and you had the ability to go to your board and suggest environmental change and stuff. So people that haven't necessarily accomplished those things might have a harder time bringing them to the right people or being taken seriously in that. And so it might be harder to catch the attention or validity to it. Okay, so what would be your suggestions to that?
And I think there are communities that grow up, and the community here, this college, almost, I would be surprised if there isn't, if you had a great idea, I'd be surprised that there isn't somebody within this community, either in the teaching staff or amongst the students, who don't have access to somebody who has access to real capital. I know I have spoken at the UN. There's an organization called Nexus, mentioned the sons and daughters of wealthy people. I've spoken twice at the UN to Nexus meetings, and I know they are reaching out to youngsters of their own age who are showing promise in terms of breaking through what's breaking down in terms of new ideas. I would think it's easier now than it used to be, where the divisions between rich and poor and so on were much more defined. I would think that there's a better chance now. But if you have a great idea and you want to discuss it, I'm here to listen.
Hey, real quick, resources in the room for students, please put your hands up. So Chris, Stuart, anybody else in here who will nurture and work with students on their ideas? So that's who you want to track down. Okay, you already know that?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Thanks.
Speaking of, I was just going to mention, there is a group, I'm Elaine Warzel with the Carter Real Estate Center, and there is a group that works with the UN that's related to the real estate side, the built environment. That's called Theopsy, and they're actually running a scholarship program right now for big ideas on how to change cities and how to make our cities safer and better overall. So if anybody's interested, it's pretty soon. I think the deadline's March 30th, but they do them twice a year. And the woman who runs it is in New York, and she said she'd be more than happy to help anybody with their applications. So everyone can collect her. It's a pretty big group. It's a global group that does real estate, and they are directly specialty humans.
Did you speak to me about that?
Theopsy, do you know that?
It was you, yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, they have a program. It's a worldwide program, but she's more than willing. She wants to see the U.S. win, so she's more than willing to help anybody. So come on by. I'm just 2 doors, one door down.
I have a question actually for students that will then springboard into Lawrence. So we started this talking about the triple bottom line, right? Social, environmental, economic systems, how they interact. And Lawrence has been talking about that through this. Students in the room, we just heard that there might not be ice at the North Pole starting next summer. That's a game changer. Right? There's not a control planet we can get back to, right? Once the ice is gone, it's pretty much gone. We know we need to change our economy and how we interact socially and therefore impact our environment. Quick popcorning, students in this room, what would a better future economy look like for you where you sit now thinking forward in your life? And then as we hear this, I'm hoping you can maybe address what you might hear in some signposts that you've already been doing along with. Does that make sense? So younger students in this room right now, what are some current concerns and how do you think a better functioning economy should look like? Does that make sense to ask? If anybody can articulate a different economic vision that takes social and environmental issues seriously, what might that look like? Yeah, go for you can just speak up.
More transparent. Giving people more access to it.
Great. Some more transparency. Others? Yep.
I've forever been annoyed by how bipartisan everything is. Just left and right. And I saw on Twitter a few weeks ago, I think it was Rand Paul, and he was going through the new, I'm not sure, I think it was the new tax bill. It was like 6,000 pages long, and it was so less complication in a very general sense.
So transparency, collaboration, not as complex. Other thoughts about a 21st century economy? Yeah, please.
I would say just thinking about everything as a system as opposed to like separate. So maybe with even the triple bottom line, like as opposed to just thinking them as 3 different entities, like as opposed to just one holistic approach. So maybe like the future economy would be more holistic and like a complex approach to tackling those broad issues as opposed to separate. That makes sense.
Yeah, excellent. Other thoughts? Yeah, please.
So I'm an older student, but not a younger student, but specifically with reference to the work of Mr. Bloom, I would say greater focus on the benefits and efficiencies of smarter, more efficient innovation, as opposed to the sort of stresses and detriments of urban lifestyle.
And as we know, most humans are in urban areas and will remain there for at least the first 2. Yep. It's okay. Yeah, please.
I think the last 2 years are moving in a positive direction towards a better economy because of more local things. Like, for example, up in Somerville, I noticed the other day there's these containers that have plants growing in them. And they're utilizing way less water, and it's almost like a hydroponic thing.
It is a hydroponic thing.
So like every time what happens is, I didn't really know exactly what it was, I kind of just looking at it, but I think because we're more consciously becoming more aware, ever since like the stock market back in 2007, they're just sort of like, hey, you got to take commercial here. I think we're moving in the right direction. We just have to continue this conversation. I'm just going to do it.
Awesome, thank you. Other thoughts, students? 21st century, yeah.
I think it goes back to what you were saying about the breakthrough things. I mean, I envision I kind of had in my mind is you think of your driveway, there's the little plants that kind of come through the concrete, and that's, you know, just looking at the system we have now and slowly saying, like, what are the things that we can change immediately, and then you can just kind of like file through as you go.
Excellent.
Yeah, there's going to be complexity about this. But let me give you an example of one. It's a UK example. And it was devised by a guy who was one of the first private equity investors in the UK. His name was Sir Ronnie Cohen. It had to do with a prison. The prison was called Peterborough Prison, where the reoffending rate was very high, it was like 90%. And what these guys calculated was that every time a prisoner reoffended, it cost £27,000. But if you put a charitable group together that dealt with anger management, housing, job skills, and the sort of support that a prisoner would need not to reoffend, if you put all those skills together, it would probably cost £6,000 per prisoner. The government doesn't have the capacity to do that. So they worked with, so the government did a deal with Ronnie Cohen, and the deal was that the government would share the difference between the £6,000 cost of putting that support piece together and the £27,000 cost per recidivist. So where so there was a 90% reoffending rate. If that was reduced to 85%, anything below 85%, the government would share the difference. Now, it was tremendously successful because how this was done is they went to a charity, prisoners' charity, that used to pay $5 million a year to support prisoners. But every year they had to find another $5 million. So what they did here was they floated a bond for $5 million, let's call it dollars, because $5 million. And the success of this project was sufficiently great that at the end of the day, the charity got its $5 million back. There was a capped return to the bond. So I think they earned, it was capped at 6%. So they actually earned 6% of their money. And they got it again to reinvest. So what I think we're watching is the end of traditional charities and traditional foundations. I think what we're going to see is a much more complex, a much more effective and efficient way of helping in the future. So for example, if a foundation is prepared to lose $10 million in what they see as a charitable venture, but actually there's a possibility from that venture of actually a major saving, social saving, or a profit being made, then a venture capitalist might come behind that money because this philanthropist is saying, I'll take the first $10 million of loss. So a venture capitalist who's not prepared to take the first $10 million of loss might sit behind that philanthropist. So what I think is we're going to see much more coherence now between philanthropy and actual real investors taking that situation. So where I'm going in my own life is this. We're looking at metrics. I'm fascinated by metrics. So there are two kinds of situations here. We have a financial system based upon GDP. That GDP doesn't take into account negative externalities. So a negative externality would be where you get told $1 a litre for petrol, for gas, $1 a litre for gas is cheap. Well, maybe it is, but what it doesn't take account of is the 50 cents damage when you take it out of the earth, and the $2 damage when you burn it in the atmosphere for acid rain and for climate change and so on. So that litre of petrol isn't $1 a litre. It's $3.50 a litre when you take the negative externalities into account. We're now also, and that there's a whole series now of metrics being drawn up on these externalities, because what's happening there, inadvertently, I don't think anybody set out to do this, but we've privatized profit and we've socialized cost. So we've let the petrol company take a profit on the dollar, maybe it's 50 cents because 50 cents goes in tax, but they're not made responsible for the damage that burning that petrol. I'm not making them responsible for that. I'm just saying it happens. That's what happens. Now there's a whole thing now going towards positive externalities. My friends in Mexico tell me that for every dollar spent on education, it saves $10 down the line, 10, 15 years later on crime. Now I don't know what the metrics are, they haven't been devised yet. But I'm going to share with you where my focus is now. If I'm a mayor of a city and there's a crime wave, I'm going to reduce the education budget and I'm going to build up the police force budget. And I'm going to exacerbate the situation. It's going to be worse in 10 years' time. If I have the metrics, I have a different capacity to understand what the real problem is. So what I would like to see in future is that when a bond is issued, it'll say what it says. So what I'm trying to do is what we did with the towels. It's just a nudge, but it makes a huge difference.